First contact fever. The research station Helios orbiting Earth's atmosphere wasn't known for excitement. Most days blended together in a predictable routine of experiments, maintenance checks, and the occasional game of zero-gravity chess. That's why when Vila Nix started behaving oddly, everyone noticed. Dr. Jonathan West nearly spilled his morning coffee when Vila entered the mess hall. The Neptunian xenobiologist was unmistakable with her iridescent violet skin and flowing silver hair that seemed to capture starlight in its strands. She typically wore her regulation blue bodysuit with professional detachment, though the design, with its exposed shoulders and specialized thermal panels, was standard issue for Neptunians due to their unique temperature regulation needs. "Morning, doctor," she purred, leaning against his table. Her luminous amber eyes, normally focused and analytical, held his with an intensity he'd never witnessed before. "Sleep well." Jonathan ran a hand through his auburn hair, suddenly aware of how disheveled he must look in his gray station uniform. "Fine, thanks. You seem different today." "Do I?" She traced a finger along the edge of his table. "I feel different, better, like I'm finally awake." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Have you ever noticed how beautiful the cosmic radiation patterns are from Observation Deck B? The view is particularly stunning during the artificial night cycle." Before Jonathan could respond, she glided away, leaving behind a faint scent reminiscent of exotic flowers and ozone. "What was that about?" Dr. Tessa Blackwood dropped into the seat across from Jonathan, her dark curls pulled back in a practical ponytail, her olive skin glowing under the station's lights. "No idea," Jonathan muttered, watching Vila interact with the station's engineer, standing too close, laughing too loudly at whatever he'd said. "That's not the Vila I know." "Yesterday she barely acknowledged my greeting in the lab," Tessa observed. "Today she's practically flirting with the entire crew." By midday, the station was buzzing with gossip. Vila had invited Jonathan to discuss xenobiological samples in her private quarters. 2 hours later, she'd emerged from a maintenance closet with station security officer Marcus, both looking distinctly rumpled and avoiding eye contact with passing crew members. That evening, Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, the station's chief medical officer, called an urgent meeting in his office. The distinguished physician adjusted his glasses nervously as Jonathan and Tessa entered. "Thank you for coming," he began, his usually calm demeanor visibly strained. "We have a situation with Ms. Nix." "You could say that again," Tessa muttered, shifting uncomfortably in her chair. Dr. Tanaka's fingers tapped at his console. "She came to me complaining of elevated body temperature and unusual urges." He cleared his throat. "After her examination, I found something concerning." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a scan of Vila's nervous system. Within her cerebral cortex, something pulsed, an organism with tendrils extending throughout her brain. "What the hell is that?" Jonathan leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his embarrassment. "A parasite," Dr. Tanaka said simply. "One I've never encountered before. It appears to be stimulating her limbic system and flooding her body with hormones." "Can you remove it?" Tessa asked, her biochemistry background immediately focusing on potential solutions. Dr. Tanaka's expression darkened. "The parasite is intensifying her desires to uncontrollable levels. Removing it will be extremely difficult. It's integrated with her neural pathways. Any attempt to extract it could cause permanent damage." The three exchanged glances of confusion and concern. Jonathan felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. "Does she know?" "Yes, she's waiting outside." When Vila entered, her usual confidence seemed diminished. A deep purple blush colored her cheeks as she avoided looking directly at either Jonathan or Tessa. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I don't know what came over me, or rather I do know, but I couldn't control it." She looked up, her eyes clear despite her embarrassment. "I need your help." Jonathan found himself reaching for her hand before he could stop himself. "Whatever you need." Tessa nodded firmly. "We'll figure this out together." Dr. Tanaka adjusted his lab coat. "I've put Ms. Nix on a regimen that should help manage the symptoms temporarily, but we need to find a permanent solution." As they began discussing options, none of them noticed the small blinking light on Dr. Tanaka's console. An incoming transmission from Earth Command marked urgent. Outside the station, a sleek obsidian ship drifted silently, its sensors focused on the medical bay window, its weapon systems running hot and ready. The meeting in Dr. Tanaka's office was interrupted by the insistent beeping of his console. The doctor frowned, his fingers tapping the flashing notification. "It appears Earth Command has been trying to reach us," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Priority 1 message." The holographic display flickered, revealing the stern face of Director Elise Morgan, her platinum blonde hair and the deep lines around her eyes speaking of decades of service. "Station Helios, this is a Class A security alert," the director began without preamble. "Our intelligence has identified a biological weapon in your vicinity. Specimen designation XB479, a neural parasite developed by the Orion Syndicate. It's designed to spread through intimate contact and compromise host judgment. The station is hereby under quarantine protocol. No ships in or out until further notice." Jonathan felt his blood run cold as he glanced at Vila, who had gone very still. "Director," Tessa stepped forward, her scientific training taking over, "we've already identified the parasite in one of our crew members. Dr. Tanaka has implemented containment protocols." The director's expression darkened. "Who's infected?" "I am," Vila said, her voice steady despite the purple blush deepening on her cheeks. "I'm the xenobiologist. I must have been exposed during my last sample collection." "And have you had contact with anyone since infection?" The director's careful phrasing didn't disguise her meaning. The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. "I see," Director Morgan sighed. "Test everyone immediately. The parasite has a 48-hour incubation period before it becomes transmissible. We're sending a medical team, but they won't arrive for 3 days. Until then, you're on your own." After the transmission ended, Dr. Tanaka turned to Jonathan and Tessa. "I need to scan both of you now." The examination was quick but thorough. Jonathan tried not to think about the implications as the scanner hummed over his body. If he was infected, what then? Would Earth Command order them all into stasis? Or worse? "Well, this is unexpected," Dr. Tanaka murmured, studying the results. "You both show early-stage infection, but the parasite is behaving differently than in Vila." "Different how?" Tessa asked, tension evident in her voice. "In Vila, it's aggressively stimulating her limbic system. In you, it's dormant, almost waiting." The doctor's eyes narrowed. "Fascinating. It appears to react differently to human physiology." Vila had been sitting quietly, but now she looked up. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I would never intentionally." "Hey," Jonathan moved to her side, taking her hand. "This isn't your fault." "He's right," Tessa added, joining them. "You're as much a victim as anyone." The tenderness of the moment was interrupted by a proximity alert. Dr. Tanaka pulled up the external cameras, revealing a sleek obsidian ship approaching the station. "They're hailing us," he said, opening the channel. A harsh, metallic voice filled the room. "Helios Station, this is Captain Ferris of the Nemesis. We have detected a Class 3 biological contaminant aboard your facility. Prepare for boarding and extraction." "Parasite hunters," Dr. Tanaka explained, muting the transmission. "They track and eliminate dangerous biological threats across the galaxy. Their methods are effective but brutal." "Will they help Vila?" Jonathan asked, his hand still holding hers. "They'll remove the parasite," the doctor replied carefully. "Whether she survives the process is secondary to their mission." Tessa straightened, her expression hardening. "Then we don't let them aboard." "We may not have a choice," Dr. Tanaka warned. "Their ship outguns this station significantly." Vila stood suddenly. "There's another option." Her amber eyes glowed with determination. "My quarters now." As they followed her through the station's corridors, Jonathan and Tessa exchanged worried glances. Outside Vila's viewport, the hunter ship loomed, its docking mechanisms extending toward the station like the talons of a predatory bird. Time was running out, and their only hope lay in understanding a parasite that had turned their world upside down in less than a day. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Desires unleashed. The walk to Vila's living quarters was tense with unspoken questions. Once inside, she sealed the door and turned to face them, her violet skin pulsing with a subtle luminescence that hadn't been present before. "The parasite responds to intimacy," she said bluntly, moving to a small console near her bed. "During our encounters, I felt it shift, almost like it was feeding, but there was something else, a connection forming that went beyond physical sensation." Jonathan leaned against the wall, trying to maintain his scientific objectivity despite the flutter in his stomach whenever Vila's amber eyes met his. "You think there's more to this organism than just spreading infection?" "I'm certain of it," Vila replied, pulling up her own research notes on the screen. "Look at these readings I took after my first episode. The neural activity doesn't match known parasitic patterns. It's too organized, too purposeful." Tessa moved closer to examine the data, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her concerns. "These patterns look almost like communication attempts. See these rhythmic pulses? They're too regular to be random." "Exactly," Vila nodded. "And there's more. When I'm with humans," she paused, a purple blush creeping across her cheeks. "When I'm intimate with humans, the parasite behaves differently than with my own kind." "That matches what Dr. Tanaka found," Jonathan said. "The organism is dormant in us but hyperactive in you." The station's alert system blared suddenly, causing all three to jump. "Attention all personnel," the automated voice announced. "Security breach at Docking Bay 3. Unknown entities have boarded the station." "The hunters," Tessa whispered, her face paling. "They didn't wait for permission." Vila moved to a cabinet, retrieving what looked like a small medical device. "There isn't much time. This scanner can detect the parasite's neural signature throughout the station. We need to understand what it wants before the hunters find us." Jonathan's communication badge chirped. "West, this is Tanaka. The hunters have neutralized our security team. They're demanding access to all infected personnel. I've initiated emergency lockdown protocols, but they have override technology. You have maybe 30 minutes. "Understood," Jonathan replied, his mind racing. "Any suggestions?" "Hide," came the terse response before the line went dead. Tessa was already at Vila's computer terminal, fingers flying across the interface. "I'm accessing the station's internal sensor grid. If we can mask our biorhythms, maybe we can." She stopped mid-sentence, her body suddenly going rigid. Jonathan moved toward her in alarm, but before he could reach her, she gasped, her pupils dilating dramatically. "Tessa," he called, grasping her shoulders. "It's communicating," she whispered, her voice distant. "I can feel it, spreading through my nervous system. It's not pain. It's—" Her gaze locked with his, her expression transforming from shock to something else entirely. "Jonathan, it's incredible." Before he could respond, Vila moved between them, her hands finding both of their faces. "The dormant parasites in your systems are activating. I can feel them resonating with mine." The air in the small quarters seemed to thicken, charged with an energy that prickled against Jonathan's skin. He felt a warmth spreading through his body, originating from where Vila's fingertips touched his temple. With it came a cascade of sensations, not just physical desire, but an overwhelming sense of connection to both women. "What's happening to us?" he managed, his voice hoarse. "I think," Vila began, her pupils expanding until her eyes were almost entirely black, "we're becoming a network. The parasite doesn't just want hosts, it wants to create bonds between them." Tessa's hand found his, completing a circle between the three of them. The moment their fingers intertwined, a pulse of energy seemed to flow between them, and suddenly Jonathan could actually feel, what the others were experiencing. Tessa's scientific fascination mingled with apprehension, Vila's alien perspective tinged with guilt and wonder, all layered over a growing, insistent desire that threatened to overwhelm their rational thoughts. "This isn't just sexual," Tessa realized aloud, her voice trembling. "It's creating a psychic connection between us. The physical response is just a side effect." Vila nodded, her silver hair shimmering under the room's lights. On my world, there are legends of ancient beings who could join minds in a sacred communion. We've always dismissed them as primitive superstition, but what if? A loud bang on the door interrupted her. By authority of the Galactic Containment Protocol, open this door immediately, a harsh, metallic voice demanded. Back entrance, Vila whispered, pulling them toward what appeared to be a maintenance hatch in the wall. All crew quarters have emergency access to the station's service tunnels. As they crawled into the narrow passageway, Jonathan felt a sudden flash of, what? Not memory exactly, but knowledge that wasn't his own. A clear mental image of the station's layout, complete with maintenance routes that he'd never studied, flooded his consciousness. Vila, he whispered as they moved through the dimly lit tunnel, I can see the station schematics in my head, but I've never memorized them. It's my knowledge, she confirmed, her voice echoing softly. I spent 3 weeks studying the emergency systems when I first arrived. The Parasite is sharing my memories with you. Behind them, the sound of Vila's door being forced open echoed through the tunnel. Heavy footsteps and the clank of what could only be weapons followed. They're inside, Tessa murmured, fear evident in her voice, and Jonathan realized with a start, palpable in his own mind. He could feel her fear as his own, a bizarre doubling of emotion that left him momentarily disoriented. This way, Vila guided them to a junction in the tunnels. The botany lab has specialized shielding to protect sensitive plant experiments. It might mask our biosignatures. They emerged into the lush greenery of the botany lab, a stark contrast to the sterile corridors of the rest of the station. Dr. Priya Singh, the station's botanist, looked up in surprise from her work at a hydroponic garden. What are you? She began, but stopped when she saw their faces. You're the infected ones they're hunting. Jonathan tensed, ready to explain, but before he could speak, Tessa stepped forward with uncharacteristic boldness. Priya, we need your help, she said, her voice carrying a strange, compelling quality that made the botanist's eyes widen. The hunters don't understand what they're dealing with. This isn't just a parasite, it's something more. To Jonathan's amazement, Dr. Singh nodded immediately. The isolation chamber for toxic specimen studies is behind that partition. It's completely shielded from internal sensors. Thank you, Vila said, her hand briefly touching the botanist's arm in gratitude. As they moved toward the indicated chamber, Jonathan noticed Dr. Singh's pupils dilate momentarily at the contact. Once inside the isolation chamber, Tessa secured the door. Did you see what just happened? Priya responded to you like she was. Influenced, Vila finished. The parasite must be enhancing our pheromones or enabling some form of subtle telepathic suggestion. Jonathan ran a hand through his auburn hair, struggling to process the implications. So now we're what? Mind-controlling our colleagues? Not controlling, Vila corrected him. Influencing, establishing a connection, there's a difference. The chamber was small, forcing them to stand close together. Jonathan became acutely aware of Tessa's quickened breathing, the heat radiating from Vila's violet skin. The desire that had been simmering beneath the surface began to intensify, clouding his thoughts. The hunters will find us eventually, Tessa said, her voice lower than usual. We need to understand this thing before they do, if it's truly a form of communication rather than just infection. Vela stepped closer, her amber eyes now rimmed with an iridescent glow. There's one way to find out. The parasite activates fully during moments of intense connection. If we join completely, perhaps we can communicate with it directly. The implication hung in the air between them. Jonathan felt a wave of conflicting emotions, professional ethics battling with desire, scientific curiosity warring with caution. But beneath it all was a growing certainty that whatever was happening between them was too significant to deny. This isn't just about physical intimacy, Vila continued, sensing his hesitation. It's about forming a complete neural network between 3 different nervous systems, 2 human, 1 Neptunian. If my theory is correct, the resulting connection could reveal the parasite's true purpose. Tessa moved to stand beside Vila, her initial fear now transformed into determination. I'm a scientist, Jonathan. We both are. If there's knowledge to be gained, a discovery to be made. The decision crystallized in his mind, not just his own choice, but a resonance of agreement between all three of them, felt rather than spoken. As they reached for each other, the parasites within them responded, their dormant energy surging to life. What followed transcended physical experience. As their bodies joined, their minds merged in ways Jonathan had never imagined possible. He saw himself through Tessa's eyes, felt the unique sensations of Vila's alien physiology as if they were his own. Memories flowed between them like water. Jonathan's childhood on Earth's northern continent, Tessa's university years studying xenobiology, Vila's coming-of-age ceremony beneath Neptune's methane seas. And beneath it all, a fourth consciousness awakened, ancient and alien yet somehow familiar. The parasite, no, the symbiote, revealed itself not as an invader but as a bridge, a living technology designed to connect minds across the boundaries of species and space. "It's beautiful," Tessa gasped, her physical voice overlapping with her mental presence in their shared consciousness. "It was never meant to harm," Vila agreed, understanding flowing between them. "It's a gift, not a weapon." Outside the isolation chamber, alarms continued to blare as the hunters swept methodically through the station. But within their sanctuary, three bodies and minds joined by an ancient symbiotic organism experienced a connection that transcended the imminent danger. In that moment of perfect union, they glimpsed the true purpose of the entity they harbored, and the threat it posed not to them, but to those who sought to destroy it. The final connection. The hunters found them eventually. The isolation chamber's door burst open with a hiss of compressed air, revealing three armored figures with face-concealing helmets and weapons that hummed with ominous energy. "Step away from each other," ordered the lead hunter, his voice distorted through his helmet's speaker system. "Infected subjects are to be separated immediately." Jonathan, Tessa, and Vila slowly disentangled themselves, their bodies still glowing with a faint luminescence that pulsed in perfect synchronization. The mental connection they'd established remained intact, allowing them to communicate without words. "Don't resist yet," Vila's thoughts flowed into theirs. "Let them believe they're in control." Captain Ferris stepped forward, his black armor adorned with silver markings denoting his rank. He removed his helmet, revealing a face with pale gray skin and eyes that reflected light like mirrors, a native of the shadow world Umbra. "Interesting," he said, studying the three of them. "The symbiote has progressed further than our intelligence suggested." He activated a scanner on his wrist guard, moving it slowly over Vila's body. Full neural integration in the primary host and partial bonding in the human subjects. Unusual. "Captain," Jonathan spoke carefully, "this isn't what you think. The organism isn't a weapon, it's a communication tool." Ferris's reflective eyes narrowed. "All biological modifications that override natural neurological functions are classified as weapons under Galactic Containment Protocol. Your opinion on the matter is irrelevant and compromised." Tessa stepped forward. "Then examine your scanner readings more carefully. If this were a weapon designed to damage or control, wouldn't you see evidence of neural deterioration? Look at our brainwave patterns. They're enhanced, not degraded." The hunter paused, studying his readings with greater attention. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his features before his professional mask reasserted itself. "Anomalies will be studied after extraction," he said finally. "Prepare them for transport." The other hunters moved forward with restraints, but halted when Dr. Tanaka appeared in the doorway, accompanied by Dr. Singh and several other station personnel. "Captain Ferris," Tanaka said firmly, "I must inform you that under Earth jurisdiction, you cannot remove these individuals without proper authorization from Earth Command. Your jurisdiction is superseded by Galactic Containment Protocol," Ferris replied coldly. "The infection has clearly spread beyond your ability to control it." Dr. Singh stepped forward. "Actually, that's not entirely accurate." She held up her tablet displaying station vital signs. "We've been monitoring the situation closely. The infection, as you call it, has stabilized in these three subjects. There are no new cases beyond initial contact." This wasn't strictly true. Jonathan could sense through their connection that Dr. Singh herself had been subtly influenced by their brief contact earlier. But the readings would support her claim for now. Ferris hesitated, clearly calculating his options. A temporary containment might be acceptable while we await further instructions from my command. He's uncertain. Tessa's thoughts reached them. The symbiote doesn't fit his understanding of parasitic organisms. We need to show him, Jonathan replied mentally. Words won't convince him. Vila stepped forward, her violet skin pulsing with light. Captain Ferris, she said, her voice carrying a new resonance that made everyone in the room focus intently on her words. You came here expecting to find victims needing rescue from a hostile invader. Instead, you found willing participants in something revolutionary. Allow us to demonstrate. Before Ferris could respond, Vila extended her hands toward him. Jonathan and Tessa moved instinctively to her sides, their hands joining hers to form a circuit of connection. What are you? Ferris began, but his words cut off as Vila's fingers made contact with his temple. The captain froze, his reflective eyes widening as the bioluminescence from Vila's skin flowed onto his, creating patterns of light that raced along his neural pathways. For a moment, the room was utterly silent except for the soft hum of the symbiote's energy transferring between them. Then Ferris gasped, staggering backward. His hunters moved to support him, weapons raising toward the trio, but he waved them off with a trembling hand. Stand down, he ordered, his voice unsteady. They're telling the truth. Captain, one of the hunters questioned. The symbiote, Ferris said, staring at his own hands as though seeing them for the first time. It's not what we thought. It doesn't destroy or subjugate. It connects. Dr. Tanaka stepped forward cautiously. What did you do to him? We showed him, Tessa explained. A temporary neural link, just enough for him to experience what we've discovered. Ferris had regained his composure but remained changed by the experience. In 3 centuries of hunting biological weapons, I've never encountered anything like this. He turned to his team. Secure the perimeter, but take no further action until I complete my evaluation. As the other hunters reluctantly withdrew, Ferris faced the trio again. You realize Earth Command will not be as easily convinced. To them, any uncontrolled biological agent represents a threat. Then we need to control it, Jonathan said. If we can demonstrate that the symbiote responds to conscious direction rather than spreading randomly. We can, Vila assured him, her confidence flowing through their mental link. The connection we've formed has stabilized the symbiote. It's no longer seeking new hosts indiscriminately. It's become selective. Dr. Singh approached cautiously. If what you're saying is true, this could revolutionize interspecies communication. The applications for diplomacy alone would be groundbreaking. And therein lies the problem, Ferris noted grimly. Such technology would be too valuable and too dangerous to leave unregulated. Every military and corporate interest in the galaxy would seek to control it. Then we need to control the narrative, Tessa said decisively. When Earth Command's team arrives, we'll be ready with indisputable evidence of the symbiote's true nature. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of preparation. With Ferris's reluctant cooperation, they established a secure laboratory where they could document the symbiote's properties under controlled conditions. Dr. Tanaka monitored their vital signs continuously, compiling medical evidence of the symbiote's benign, even beneficial, effects on their neural functions. Jonathan, Tessa, and Vila worked in perfect harmony, their shared consciousness allowing them to coordinate their efforts without the need for verbal communication. They discovered they could extend their awareness throughout the station, creating a mental map of everyone aboard and their activities. More importantly, they learned to control the symbiote's influence, focusing its energy in productive ways rather than the chaotic expression of desire that had initially manifested. Vila's heightened emotional state had been merely the first, most primitive response to the symbiote's presence, like an immune system overreacting before finding balance. It was designed for controlled introduction, Vila explained to Ferris as they reviewed their findings. The initial sexual response was a result of improper calibration for different species' neurochemistry. Once stabilized across our three nervous systems, it achieved its intended function. "And what function is that, exactly?" Ferris asked, his reflective eyes studying them with lingering suspicion. "Unity," Jonathan answered simply. "Perfect understanding across biological boundaries. Think about it, Captain. How many conflicts in galactic history stemmed from simple misunderstandings between species? What if we could bridge those gaps?" Ferris nodded slowly. "A noble goal, but such power could easily be weaponized. Force someone into a symbiotic connection against their will, and you've created the perfect interrogation tool. Which is why we need ethical guidelines established from the beginning," Tessa countered. "The symbiote itself resists unwilling connections. We've proven that in our trials. It seeks harmony, not dominance." Their discussion was interrupted by the station's proximity alert. On the main view screen, a large Earth command vessel appeared, accompanied by several smaller ships of varying registry. "Right on schedule," Dr. Tanaka observed, "and it appears they've brought reinforcements." "Not just reinforcements," Ferris noted, recognizing some of the vessels. "Corporate interests, religious representatives, military research divisions, your discovery has attracted quite an audience." Vila's fingers intertwined with Jonathan's and Tessa's, their shared apprehension flowing freely through their connection. "Then we stand together," she said softly. "Whatever happens next, we face it as one." As Earth Command's delegation prepared to board, the trio made their final preparations. They stood in the station's main conference room, the symbiote's energy flowing visibly between them, creating an aura of shimmering light that pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. "Remember," Jonathan said aloud, though his thoughts carried the same message, "they'll try to separate us, to study us individually. We can't let that happen." "We won't," Tessa assured him, her confidence bolstering his own. "What we've found is too important to surrender." Vila's amber eyes glowed with determination. They came expecting a crisis to manage. Instead, they'll witness a revelation. The doors slid open, revealing Director Morgan at the head of a diverse group of officials and specialists. Her eyes widened momentarily at the sight of the trio's luminescent connection before her professional mask reasserted itself. "Dr. West, Dr. Blackwood, Ms. Nix," she acknowledged them crisply. "I see the situation has evolved since our last communication." "Director," Jonathan stepped forward, still maintaining physical contact with the others. "What you're witnessing isn't a contamination or an invasion. It's the beginning of something remarkable." Morgan's expression remained skeptical, but as the symbiote's light pulsed more intensely, something changed in her eyes, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even wonder. "Show me," she said simply. As the trio extended their hands toward her, the symbiote's energy reaching out like tendrils of light, they knew this moment would transform not just their lives, but potentially the future of interspecies relations throughout the galaxy. The barrier between their minds and the director's began to dissolve, creating a bridge of perfect understanding, the first of many such connections to come. In that moment of shared consciousness, as four minds temporarily became one, the true gift of the symbiote revealed itself. Not the fleeting pleasure of physical desire that had initially manifested, but the profound joy of complete acceptance and understanding that transcended all biological differences. The connection was beautiful, it was revolutionary, and it was just the beginning. The end.